Hello everyone, Jared here, and in today's video we're leaving Yibin and heading north in a taxi today to Zigong, a small city of 2.5 million people in central Sichuan province. And the taxi ride there only took us about an hour. This was our first time traveling on the highway, but when we finally reached Zigong, we were greeted by the signs of many dinosaur statues along the road. Why were they here, you might ask? That's because one of the things that the city is best known for is the Dinosaur Museum. Anyways, we dropped our things off at the hotel nearby and then went off into the outlet mall right next door.
We have just arrived in Zigong. We are outside of our hotel and there's a fairly new looking outlet mall here.
And it really was new. In fact, it had opened just a few weeks before we'd arrived, even though there were clearly some construction issues going on. However, we spent most of the day looking around this outlet mall and trying to find some place we would have lunch. So, after just a little bit, we eventually found where we wanted to have lunch, which was at this Korean restaurant you see right here. And while my father really enjoyed his meal, I had a big problem with my meal that you're about to find out.
Well, a second ago I just did something incredibly stupid with the Korean food that I was having. I forgot that the iron pot bowl was hot, and I tried shoveling with the chopsticks right into my mouth, and I put my lip up against the hot iron. So I'm trying to get a drink as fast as possible so that I can try to cool that down, not let it swell too much.
Well, that was rather dumb of me. Don't stick your lip against a cast iron bowl, but at least it didn't swell up too bad. We moved on from lunch and went back to the hotel where we pretty much just sat around the rest of the day relaxing because we were tired from traveling a lot recently and decided it would be better to just look at the TV, watch the cartoons, and wait until the next day to go to what we wanted to see here in Zigong. So day 2, we woke up early and arrived at this place.
Here we are today in Zigong at the Salt Museum. Let's go ahead and take a look.
So this Salt Museum is one of the major draws of Zigong's tourism, and the tickets were actually very cheap to get inside, although I can't remember the exact pricing. And once we went inside, it looked extravagant. And while my father was recording this scene that you see in front of you right here, he immediately turned it to the side to look at me because all of a sudden I was swarmed by children.
They were asking if they wanted to be tour guides for us around the place, but of course they wouldn't really be able to do it in English for all of you guys, and that's why I really decided not to do that. Even though it's cute to have all these children being tour guides for people for free because a way to really practice improving their speaking ability and who knows what else. I'm gonna have to research why they have kids doing this at all these different places, but it's really interesting that I'm noticing this at a lot of different historical sites and museums.
Although I haven't shown it until now, this was maybe the 3rd or 4th time on the trip that we'd had so many children acting as tour guides, teaching tourists about what these historical monuments and sites were about. To this day, I still don't know whether it was as part of a class assignment, or if it was just something that they are doing as part of a club or in their spare time. Maybe someone in the comments can tell me more, if they know anything about it. Anyways, this place was absolutely exquisite. As you can see by this mural here, the designs are really intricate, and they stretch all across the walls of the various rooms inside the courtyard. And it's not just this part either. The railings, the roofs, everything looks like it was exquisitely done, and the detailing is incredible. I can't imagine how much money it must have cost for whoever used to own this place to actually have all of this made. Then again, the salt trade was one of the sources of great wealth in dynastic China. So people were able to afford all types of extravagances if they were involved in the salt trade, from stone carvings to waterways, stylized trees, and more. The exhibits for the museum, however, were located on the 2nd floor, and you can see them a bit in the background here. This salt museum is basically inside of where most of the salt production was happening in central China throughout history. And the very first part of the exhibit for us was going into this art section that showed all these ancient murals depicting what the salt trade was like back in the day. It's not very often that you get to see one museum that holds so much history of what happened locally, and this really did feel special because of how many aspects of the salt trade we were able to see in just this small space. But the history of the salt trade wasn't just limited to what was going on in Zigong at the time. It also included a lot of history of the salt production across China, and it covered the three major types of salt extraction: lake salt, well salt, and sea salt, all with really in-depth descriptions, including in English. And I would have to say that this was probably one of the best explained exhibits that we'd been to in all of China. I actually learned quite a lot here, such as the difference between brine and man-made salt, and a lot of other things that I didn't know previously about various layers of minerals and gas as you dig below the Earth's surface, the types of minerals that existed locally in the ground, as well as the depths in meters at which the wells had been dug historically, including information about the well that we would be going to in just a little bit, the Shanghai well. But what's truly remarkable is the few photographs that still exist from when the salt trade was still occurring back in the late 1800s, because you're able to spend a lot of time looking at each building, each individual that's caught in the frames. And probably the most impressive photo was of this place that used to be right nearby, Wangye Temple, where all the salt would be loaded onto these boats and off to the rest of China. There were also plenty of models that showed how the extraction process happened, as well as what the sites looked like where the extraction took place for the salt wells well below the earth. At the museum, you could also see plenty of tools that were used for the collection, the excavation, and the cleaning of salt, as well as places such as these brine pools and salt fields that still exist today in parts of China. But that was it for the main section of the museum. After that, we went behind into the back and wanted to see what was back in this area as well. However, there really wasn't much more that had to deal with the salt trade and its history in China, so I didn't really include much of that here, and instead decided to just include this. So that's it from our time spent at the Salt Museum, and I can't recommend it enough if you're interested in Chinese history to come here.
That's it for the Salt Museum. Next, we're going to go to the actual well. We've just arrived at the Shanghai well, and we're going to go ahead and see what this one's about. It's a more modern well. It came about in about the 1800s. So we'll get to see what a not relatively old well looks like, but still pre-industrial era well.
And this was a map of the park where the well actually exists. Unfortunately, the well doesn't remain in operation today. However, they do have a mock-up as soon as you enter the park of what the well would have looked like under operation. And one of the really cool things is you can actually see one of the individuals who works there turn it on, essentially, and demonstrate how it would extract salt from the well. To this day, I still don't really understand the way that the process works, but it really is a marvel of human engineering. So once the brine is extracted from the well, and it's stored in this side bucket, he capped off the well itself, and then we went on to the next section, which housed this gigantic wheel that's pushed by oxen. And this is how the well was able to operate on a large scale, because it required a lot of power in order to keep the machine running. But probably my favorite thing about this was the mistranslations again. Anyways, after that, we went back out to see more reconstructions of the types of engineering feats that were used to extract brine from these wells. And then moving on from there, one of the things I noticed was that the railings in this area were also really interesting, and I felt I had to include them in this video. As you can tell by what you're seeing here, a lot of these have to deal with the salt trade too. So the railings are designed specifically, again, for this salt industry. So I found this to be a really nice touch. Probably one of the largest models that they had at the museum was actually of the brine tower, which is linked up to the bamboo tubes that are used to deliver the salt brine across long distances of land. They put putty in at the tube's surfaces in order to prolong their service over a longer period of time, so that the brine can travel down all the way to be stored in the buckets further downstream. There were a lot of other exhibits at this museum that we wanted to see, but unfortunately, a lot of the rooms were closed off for whatever reason.
Unfortunately, quite a bit in this place looks to be closed off or locked away, so you're not able to do much inside.
However, there was at least one thing that we were able to see that was definitely worth it.
While most of the buildings are closed off to visitors, we're able to at least visit the one I think that is the most interesting in the entire process of making salt, which is the stove building.
And here we were, at the actual location where, to this day, they are still changing the brine into salt, and it really does not look like easy work. Nor does it really look like it's safe, because I don't think this is a standard safe practice to be wearing flip-flops and nothing that would protect you from the scalding temperatures. But that's China for you. Anyways, it was really neat to be able to see people taking brine from these pools and then pouring them over these stoves where the water and gases would burn off and all that would remain on top is the salts. And once the salts were made, the salt is packed away and shipped off to other parts of the country. So once the process of creating the salt is done, I guess historically that this accounting office would be where they would make all the measurements for who would be getting what salt and where it would be delivered and for what prices. So this was yet another insight into what the salt trade was like back in dynastic China. Maybe the reason that they're all shirtless is actually because of how hot it must be doing all this labor. I know that just being in that room, it felt rather hot to me. Anyways, that was it for our visits to these salt museums. And with that, we were off to the final location for the day, the Dinosaur Museum in northeastern Zigong.
Last but not least for our stops here in Zigong is the Dinosaur Museum.
What's so special about this dinosaur museum is that it was the first specialized dinosaur museum in all of Asia, and the largest on-site dinosaur museum in the world. And now it was our turn to go on in and see what they had.
Just saved us 40 yuan for getting into the Dinosaur Museum because I brought a senior with me.
It was nice to be able to get him in for free. Then, once we were inside, we just looked around at all the mock-ups of dinosaurs before heading into the main hall, where we were greeted with this sight. I thought it was a little strange that these dinosaurs were not behind any kind of protective screen or glass, but as it turns out, that's because most of these are just molds of real dinosaurs, and aren't the actual remains. And some of them look like they were put together in funny ways that weren't natural.
Okay, something definitely seems wrong about the way this one's put together. I think it's got something to do with this section. At least they have fun with this exhibit.
Well, he has to eat, after all. He's all bones.
And with that joke out of the way, we went on to the next part.
This part is the real reason we came to the Dinosaur Museum, because it's supposed to have a big open pit. Let's go check it out.
This was the first open pit I'd ever seen, and it truly did not disappoint. There were a bunch of dinosaur skeletons scattered all over the area. I actually couldn't believe how many there were here, and I actually thought at the time that maybe some of these were not real, because I'd never seen so many skeletons together at once at an excavation site. But, from what I've understood, after looking it up, it sounds like all of these are real, and boy is it an impressive sight. But what I liked to see most was actually outside of the pit, in the second floor of the museum, such as this aquatic dino skeleton that you see behind me, as well as the fossilized remains of this other one. And there were plenty of other dinosaur skulls, including one Rex skull, and lots of fossilized dinosaur eggs. I think the eggs are the coolest for some reason. Anyways, that's it for our trip to the Dinosaur Museum. We headed back to the mall and started to look around for some food. And after having this snack, we went back outside and decided we should actually get some real dinner. And so we walked a little ways to get something that I really had a craving for. And what was that, you might ask? Well, it was this, jianbing, something that I used to have all the time when I was in Beijing, and I really missed having. So for those who are not aware what this process involves, they put down a batter and then mix it with egg. Then once it's cooked on one side, they flip it over, put on some chili sauce, add a whole bunch of sliced vegetables and sometimes meat, put on various sauces, then wrap it all up. It's real quick for them to make, and it always tastes so good. And with that out of the way, we headed back to our hotel and we're done with our day in Zigong. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Next time, we're going to go ahead and take a long trip from Zigong to Chongqing, one of the largest and most famous cities in China. We'll be heading to the famous Hongyadong, as well as going to the People's Hall in the middle of the city, and the Three Gorges Dam Museum. So I hope you look forward to seeing it. Until next time. Thank you again for watching this video. Please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel if you have not already done so. Also, please share this channel with others so we can make the channel grow together as I continue to put out more videos.